The parking lot was empty except for two figures. A father crouched beside his broken-down car, tools scattered like defeated soldiers, and his 6-year-old daughter sitting cross-legged on the asphalt, drawing flowers with chalk while hunger gnawed at her small belly. When the black Tesla pulled up, and a woman in a $1,000 coat stepped out, neither of them knew this moment would fracture everything they thought they understood about survival, pride, and the weight of accepting help from a stranger. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The wrench slipped from Marcus's oil-stained fingers for the third time, clattering against the asphalt like a judgment. He pressed his forehead against the warm metal of the Honda's bumper and tried to remember when breathing had become this difficult. "Daddy?" Her voice was small behind him. Patient. The way children learn to be, when the world kept breaking around them. "Just give me a minute, baby." But he didn't have a minute. The sun was setting behind the grocery store, painting the empty parking lot in shades of amber and regret. They'd been here for 2 hours. His phone had died sometime around hour 1, and the tow truck he couldn't afford wasn't coming anyway. Sophia had stopped asking when they were going home. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans, the good pair, the ones without holes, and turned to find her sitting cross-legged on the warm asphalt, a piece of sidewalk chalk in her small fist. Pink flowers bloomed across the gray concrete, their petals reaching toward the dying light. "Where'd you get that?" he asked. "Found it." She didn't look up. "By the cart thing. A shopping cart corral. Of course." Even here, even now, she was making something beautiful out of what others had discarded. He watched her work, adding stems with careful precision, her tongue pressed against her bottom lip in concentration. 6 years old, and she'd already learned not to ask for things they couldn't afford. Not to mention when she was hungry, though he could see it in the careful way she moved, preserving energy. The last $27 in his wallet felt like a stone in his back pocket. "It's getting dark, Daddy." "I know. Are we sleeping in the car again?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Not because she asked it, children asked everything, but because of how easily she said it. Matter of fact, like sleeping in cars was just another thing that happened, like rain or grocery stores closing. "No," he said, though he wasn't sure how he'd make that true. "No, we're going home." She looked up then, chalk dust on her fingertips, and smiled. Okay. That smile. God, that smile could power cities. Marcus crouched down beside the Honda's front end, staring at the radiator that had given up somewhere between the temp agency and here. Steam had stopped rising from it an hour ago, but the acrid smell lingered. He could probably fix it given time. Given parts. Given a garage that wasn't a parking lot, and tools that weren't borrowed from his landlord's grudging toolbox. "Daddy." Look. She'd drawn a house now, complete with windows and a door, and something that might have been a chimney. Stick figures stood in front, one tall, one small, holding hands under a yellow circle. "Sunday. That's us," she said, unnecessarily. "I see that. When we get home, can we have pancakes for dinner?" Pancakes. Because flour was cheap, and eggs were cheaper, and she'd learned, somehow, that asking for what they could afford was safer than asking for what she wanted. Sure, baby. But they were out of flour. And eggs. And the gas had been shut off yesterday, though he hadn't told her that yet. A car pulled into the lot, a black Tesla, that looked like it belonged in a different universe. Marcus tensed. The way people in his position learned to tense when expensive things got too close. But the car parked 3 spaces away, its engine silent, and sat there with its tinted windows reflecting the last of the daylight. Sophia had gone back to her drawing, adding what looked like a dog to the stick figure family. They didn't have a dog. Had never had a dog. But in her chalk world, they did. The Tesla's door opened. A woman stepped out tall, purposeful, wearing a coat that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Her heels clicked against the asphalt, with the confidence of someone who had never doubted whether they belonged anywhere. She walked toward the grocery store, then stopped, turned, looked at them. Marcus felt his shoulders square involuntarily. He knew this look, the calculating glance of someone trying to decide whether to call security or social services, or just keep walking. He'd seen it in bank lobbies and school offices, and everywhere people who had things looked at people who didn't. "Daddy, the pretty lady is looking at us. Don't stare, Sophia." But the woman was walking over. Her heels made that decisive sound against concrete, each step deliberate. Marcus stood, wiping his hands again on jeans that would never be clean enough for this conversation. She stopped just outside the boundary of personal space, close enough to talk, far enough to retreat. Smart. Up close, she was younger than he'd first thought. Maybe early 30s, with dark hair pulled back, and eyes that took in everything. The scattered tools, the chalk art, the way Sophia had unconsciously moved closer to his legs. "Car trouble?" she asked. Her voice was crisp, professional, the kind of voice that gave orders and expected them to be followed. But she was looking at Sophia when she said it, and something in her expression softened. "Nothing I can't handle," Marcus said. It was a lie, and they both knew it. "I'm Elena," she said, extending a manicured hand. "Elena Santos." Marcus hesitated, then shook it. Her grip was firm, quick, businesslike. "Marcus, this is Sophia." Sophia waved with the hand that wasn't holding chalk. "Hi, Sophia. That's beautiful artwork." "Thank you," Sophia beamed. "It's our house." "With a dog?" "We don't have a dog yet, but maybe someday." Elena crouched down to Sophia's level, expensive coat pooling around her knees on dirty asphalt. She studied the chalk drawing with the seriousness it deserved. "What's the dog's name?" "Pancake." Elena laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. "Pancake?" "Because dogs like pancakes. And we're having pancakes for dinner." Something flickered across Elena's face. Marcus couldn't read it. Pity, maybe, or calculation. People like her were always calculating something. "Your car," Elena said, standing and brushing invisible dust from her coat. "Radiator?" "Yeah." "How long have you been here?" "Too long," Marcus wanted to say. Long enough for Sophia to get hungry. Long enough for the sun to set. Long enough for him to feel like a failure all over again. "Couple hours." Elena nodded, pulled out her phone, the newest iPhone, because of course, and made a call. She walked a few steps away, her voice too low to overhear. Marcus caught fragments. "Tow truck. Tonight. Whatever it costs. Daddy, is she helping us?" "I don't know, baby." But he did know, and that was the problem. Help always came with strings, always came with judgment, always came with the assumption that people like him couldn't take care of people like Sophia. Elena finished her call and walked back. "There's a tow truck coming. Should be here in 20 minutes. I didn't ask for, I know." She cut him off, but not unkindly. "You didn't ask. I'm offering. I can't pay for a tow." "I didn't ask you to." The words hung in the evening air between them. Marcus felt the familiar burn of pride and necessity warring in his chest. Pride said, "Walk away." Necessity said Sophia was hungry, and it was getting cold, and the Honda wasn't going to fix itself with good intentions. "Why?" he asked. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then at Sophia, who had gone back to her artwork with the casual acceptance of children who lived in a world where adults made incomprehensible decisions. "Because," Elena said finally, "sometimes the world works better when we help each other." It was such a simple statement, so naive. Marcus almost laughed. "You don't know anything about me," he said. "No," she agreed. "I don't. I could be anyone. Could be dangerous." Elena's eyes flicked to Sophia, who was now drawing what looked like a tree beside the chalk house. "Are you?" "No." "Then we don't have a problem." The tow truck arrived 16 minutes later, its yellow lights cutting through the growing darkness. The driver was efficient, professional, asked no questions about who was paying or why. He loaded the Honda onto his flatbed with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Where to?" he asked. Marcus gave him the address of Jerry's garage, the only place in town that would let him pay in installments and didn't ask too many questions about insurance. Elena handed the driver her credit card without ceremony. "Ma'am," the driver said, "this is gonna run about $200 with the after-hours fee." "That's fine. $200. Like it was nothing. Like it was pocket change she'd found between couch cushions. Marcus watched her sign the slip, watched the tow truck drive away with his dead Honda, riding on its back like a defeated animal. "Thank you," he said, because he had to say something. "You're welcome." Sophia had gathered up her chalk and was standing beside them, looking small in the empty parking lot. The grocery store was closing employees, walking to their cars, lights going off in sections. "How are you getting home?" Elena asked. The question he'd been dreading, because home was a 15-minute drive or a 2-hour walk, and it was cold now, and Sophia's legs were 6 years old. "We'll figure it out," he said. Elena looked at them, both really looked, the way people did when they were making decisions that mattered. "Get in," she said, walking toward the Tesla. "What?" "Get in. I'll drive you. You don't even know where we live. Then you can tell me." Marcus felt that familiar tug-of-war between pride and practicality. But Sophia was already walking toward the Tesla, drawn by the sleek lines and the way the lights came on automatically when Elena approached. "It's okay, Daddy," Sophia said, looking back at him. "The pretty lady is nice." And there it was, the trust of a 6-year-old who still believed the world was fundamentally good, that pretty ladies in expensive cars were fairy godmothers, that help came without cost or consequence. Marcus followed his daughter to the Tesla, telling himself it was just a ride home. Just a debt he'd find a way to repay. Just another kindness from a stranger who would disappear from their lives as quickly as she'd appeared. He had no idea that Elena Santos was the CEO of Santos Industries, that her net worth was measured in numbers he'd never even imagined, or that this accidental meeting in a grocery store parking lot was about to change everything he thought he knew about survival, pride, and the complicated mathematics of accepting help. The Tesla's interior was like stepping into the future leather seats that adjusted automatically, screens everywhere, silence so complete it felt almost sacred. Sophia sat in the back seat, eyes wide, running her small fingers over surfaces that had never known chalk dust or fast food spills. "Pretty," she whispered. Elena smiled in the rearview mirror. "Thank you." As they pulled out of the parking lot, Marcus gave her directions in single sentences, watching the familiar landscape pass by through windows that cost more than some people's cars. The silence stretched between them, comfortable for Sophia, tense for him. "What do you do for work?" Elena asked. "Construction. When there's work. And when there isn't? Temp agencies. Whatever's available." She nodded, didn't ask the obvious follow-up questions about stability or benefits, or why he was alone with a 6-year-old daughter in a broken-down Honda. People like her usually asked those questions, usually wanted to understand the mathematics of failure, the specific decisions that led to chalk art in parking lots. "Turn left at the light," Marcus said. They were in his neighborhood now, the kind of place where lawns grew wild and chain-link fences marked territory that wasn't really worth defending. Elena didn't comment on the change in scenery, didn't lock her doors or check her mirrors more frequently. She just drove, following his directions with the same focused attention she'd probably give to a board meeting. "There," Marcus said, pointing to a duplex with peeling paint and a porch light that flickered. "The left side." Elena pulled into the cracked driveway and put the car in park. The engine went silent, and suddenly, they were just 3 people sitting in an expensive car outside a cheap house, trying to figure out what came next. "Thank you," Marcus said again. "For everything. I'll pay you back." "Don't worry about it. I will, though, pay you back." Elena turned in her seat to look at him directly. Why is that so important to you? The question caught him off guard. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he'd never had to explain it to someone who didn't already understand. Because, he said finally, debts have weight, and I don't like carrying more than I have to. She studied his face in the dim light from the porch. What if it wasn't a debt? What if it was just one person helping another? Same thing, in the end. Is it? Before he could answer, Sophia spoke up from the back seat. Daddy, can we invite the pretty lady for pancakes? Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Sophia, we can't. Why not? Because we don't have flour. Because the gas is shut off. Because people like Elena Santos don't eat dinner in places like this, at tables that wobble on uneven legs, off plates that don't match. Because Elena probably has somewhere else to be, he said instead. Do you? Sophia asked Elena directly. Elena was quiet for a moment, her hands still on the steering wheel, looking at the house through the windshield. The porch light flickered again, casting unstable shadows. Actually, she said, I don't. The house felt smaller with Elena Santos in it. Marcus fumbled with the key. The lock stuck. It always stuck, but somehow, it felt more stubborn with an audience. Behind him, Sophia bounced on her toes, excited to show off their home to the pretty lady. Elena waited patiently, her expensive coat a stark contrast against the chipped paint of their front door. Got it, Marcus said as the lock finally gave way. The door swung open to reveal their living room threadbare couch, facing a television that worked when it wanted to, coffee table made from milk crates, and a piece of plywood. Walls bare, except for Sophia's drawings taped up with Scotch tape that was losing its grip. Welcome to our house, Sophia announced, spreading her arms wide, like she was presenting a mansion. Elena stepped inside, and Marcus watched her eyes take inventory. The space heater in the corner that would stay cold tonight. The stack of bills on the kitchen counter that he'd forgotten to hide, the way sound carried because there wasn't enough furniture to absorb it. It's lovely, Elena said, and somehow managed not to make it sound like pity. Sophia grabbed Elena's hand, manicured nails, meeting chalk-stained fingers, and pulled her toward the kitchen. This is where we make pancakes, she said. Daddy makes the best pancakes. He puts vanilla in them. Marcus caught up to them in the kitchen doorway. Elena was looking at their ancient gas stove, at the cabinet doors that didn't quite close, at the refrigerator that hummed too loud and leaked water onto towels they couldn't afford to replace. Daddy, can you make pancakes now? The moment he'd been dreading. Marcus opened the cabinet, where flour should have been, where he knew flour wasn't, and stared at the empty shelves like they might produce ingredients through sheer force of will. Actually, baby, maybe we should… Oh, Sophia said, her voice suddenly small. We don't have stuff. The disappointment in her voice was worse than the empty cabinet. Worse than Elena Santos, standing in their kitchen, seeing exactly how close to the edge they really lived. I could go to the store, Elena said quietly. No. The word came out sharper than Marcus intended. No, we don't need Daddy. Sophia's voice was patient, the way it got when she was about to say something that made him feel like she was older than 6. It's okay to let people help sometimes. Elena was looking at him, waiting. Not pushing, not insisting, just waiting. The store's closed, Marcus said finally. Not all of them. Of course not all of them. People like Elena Santos lived in a world where stores stayed open, where money meant access, where problems like empty cabinets had solutions that didn't require choosing between groceries and electricity. I'll be right back, Elena said, already reaching for her keys. Elena, wait. But she was already moving toward the door, Sophia, trailing behind her like a hopeful shadow. Can I come? Sophia asked. Sophia, no, Marcus said. Elena doesn't need. Actually, Elena said, crouching down to Sophia's level, I could use the company, if your dad says it's okay. Sophia looked up at him with those eyes, her mother's eyes, the ones that could convince him of anything. "Please, Daddy?" Marcus felt the walls of his carefully controlled world shifting. Strangers didn't take his daughter grocery shopping. Strangers didn't fix cars, or offer rides, or invite themselves for pancakes in kitchens where the gas had been shut off. But Elena wasn't looking at Sophia like she was a burden or a charity case. She was looking at her like she was a person worth listening to. "Okay," he said. "But just to the store." "Just to the store," Elena agreed. They were gone 23 minutes. Marcus spent the time pacing, straightening things that didn't need straightening, trying to figure out how to turn on a gas stove that wasn't getting gas. He called the utility company from his dead phone, which obviously didn't work, then remembered the neighbor's landline, and called from there. "Payment needs to be received by morning to restore service," the automated voice told him. $243. By morning, he was still staring at the stove when they returned, Elena carrying what looked like half a grocery store in biodegradable bags, Sophia chattering about everything she'd seen. "And they have a whole aisle just for cereal, Daddy. Like 20 different kinds. And Elena let me pick the pancake mix. The one with the man on it. And she got the good syrup, not the kind that's mostly corn syrup." Elena set the bags on the counter, began unpacking with efficient movements. Real maple syrup, organic eggs, bacon that came in packages Marcus recognized from commercials but had never actually purchased. "Elena," Marcus said, "this is too much." She looked up from organizing ingredients. "Is it? I can't pay for all this." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" She paused, holding a container of fresh strawberries. "I'm not asking for anything." "Everyone asks for something." "Do they?" Sophia had climbed onto a kitchen chair and was examining the pancake mix box like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Daddy, look, it says it makes fluffy pancakes. Are our pancakes fluffy?" "Pretty fluffy," he said, though he couldn't remember the last time they'd had pancakes. Couldn't remember the last time they'd had anything that wasn't rationed, calculated, stretched to last until the next paycheck that might or might not come. Elena was watching him. "The stove isn't working." It wasn't a question. "Gas got shut off," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "But it's okay. Daddy says they'll turn it back on soon." Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. Elena's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Not judgment, something else. Something that looked like recognition. "There's a diner down the street," she said. "Mickey's, I think. We could go there." "Elena, for pancakes, all three of us," Sophia gasped. "Really? We can go to a restaurant?" "If your dad says yes." They were both looking at him, Sophia, with desperate hope. Elena, with something that might have been understanding. Outside, the streetlights were coming on, casting pools of yellow light on cracked sidewalks. "It's late," Marcus said. "Mickey's is open all night," Elena said. "I checked." Of course she had. People like Elena Santos planned ahead, researched options, found solutions before problems became disasters. "Please, Daddy. I've never had restaurant pancakes." Never. 6 years old, and she'd never had restaurant pancakes, because restaurant pancakes cost $8 plus tip. And $8 was half a day's groceries when you shopped carefully. "Okay," he said, surprising himself. "But just this once." Sophia cheered, actually cheered. Like she'd won something important. Mickey's Diner looked like it had been transported from 1952 and left to age gracefully under fluorescent lights, and the accumulated stories of people who ate breakfast at Blois. Midnight. Red vinyl booths. Black and white checkered floor. A jukebox that might have worked if anyone fed it quarters. The waitress, her name tag said Dolores, brought them to a corner booth and set down menus that had seen better decades. What'll it be, folks? Sophia studied her menu with the intensity of someone making life-changing decisions. "What kind of pancakes do you have?" "Buttermilk, blueberry, chocolate chip, strawberry." Banana. Chocolate chip, Sophia said immediately, then looked at Marcus. Is that okay? It's okay. Elena ordered coffee and wheat toast. Marcus got the cheapest thing on the menu, 2 eggs over easy, and tried not to think about Elena's credit card paying for all of it. So, Elena said, when Dolores had taken their menus and disappeared, "What does Sophia like to do?" It was such a normal question. The kind of question people asked at parent-teacher conferences or neighborhood barbecues or anywhere normal families gathered to discuss normal things. I like to draw, Sophia said. And read. Daddy reads to me every night. What are you reading now? Charlotte's Web. It's about a pig and a spider who are friends. Elena nodded seriously. That's a good book. Do you like to read? Sophia asked. I do, though I don't read as much as I should anymore. Why not? Work gets busy. What kind of work do you do? Marcus tensed. This was where it would come out. The reality of who Elena Santos was. The absurdity of her sitting in Mickey's diner buying pancakes for people she'd met in a parking lot. I run a company, Elena said simply. What kind of company? We make things. Software, mostly. Programs that help other companies work better. Sophia nodded like she understood, though Marcus doubted she knew what software was. Their food arrived. Sophia's pancakes were indeed chocolate chip, stacked high with whipped cream and dusted with powdered sugar. Elena's wheat toast looked austere by comparison. Marcus's egg stared up at him from the plate. Sophia took a bite, and her eyes went wide. Daddy, they're so good. She offered him a forkful, and he tasted it sweet and fluffy, and probably containing more sugar than she usually ate in a week. Good? Elena asked. Really good. They ate in comfortable quiet, the kind that settled between people who had stopped trying to impress each other. Outside, traffic passed in lazy intervals. Inside, the diner hummed with late-night energy truckers, shift workers, insomniacs, people who existed in the spaces between regular life. Elena, Sophia said, syrup on her chin. Are you rich? Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. Sophia, it's okay, Elena said. She wiped Sophia's chin with a napkin. Why do you ask? Your car is really fancy. And your coat. And you bought groceries without looking at prices. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Elena considered the question seriously. I have more money than I need, she said finally. What does that make you think about? That you're lucky. Do you think it's just luck? Sophia took another bite, thinking. Maybe, or maybe you worked really hard. Maybe both. Are you happy? The question hung in the air between them. Elena set down her coffee cup, looked out the window at the empty street. Are you? She asked. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. I'm happy right now. These are the best pancakes ever. Right now is what matters, Elena said quietly. Marcus watched this exchange, trying to figure out what he was seeing. Elena Santos, who probably had board meetings and stock options and problems he couldn't even imagine, sitting in a diner at 10 p.m., having a philosophical discussion with a 6-year-old about happiness. Daddy, are you happy? Sophia asked. The question caught him off guard. Was he happy? He was tired, worried, constantly calculating the distance between paycheck and disaster. But looking at Sophia chocolate on her cheek, syrup-sticky fingers, completely absorbed in the pleasure of restaurant pancakes, maybe happiness was simpler than he'd thought. I'm happy when you're happy, he said. Good, she said, satisfied. Elena, do you have kids? No. Do you want kids? Elena looked at Sophia for a long moment. I used to think I was too busy for kids. And now? Now, I think maybe being too busy isn't a good reason for anything. They finished eating as the diner filled with the night shift crowd. Elena paid the check without ceremony, left a tip that made Dolores smile. They walked out into the cool night air, Sophia skipping ahead to the Tesla. Thank you, Marcus said as they reached the car. For dinner. For everything. You're welcome. I meant what I said before, about paying you back. Elena paused with her hand on the car door. What if I told you there was a way to do that? Something in her tone made Marcus look at her more carefully. What do you mean? I mean, what if there was something you could do for me? Something that would make this less about charity and more about mutual benefit. I'm listening. Elena glanced at Sophia, who was making faces at her reflection in the Tesla's tinted windows. Not here, Elena said. Not tonight, but soon, if you're interested. Interested in what? A job. The word landed between them like a challenge. What kind of job? The kind that comes with regular hours, benefits, a paycheck you can count on. Marcus felt something twist in his chest, hope, maybe, or fear. They felt the same most of the time. Why? He asked. Elena looked at him directly. Because everyone deserves a chance to stop worrying about whether they can afford pancakes. She said it simply, without drama or sentiment. Like it was just another fact about the world: gravity, taxes, everyone deserving pancakes. I don't know anything about software, Marcus said. You don't need to. Not for what I'm thinking. Then what? We'll talk, Elena said, opening the car door. Soon. If you want to. They drove back to the duplex in silence, Sophia falling asleep in the back seat, her face sticky with syrup and contentment. Elena parked in the driveway and killed the engine. Can you carry her? She asked quietly. Marcus lifted Sophia from the back seat, felt her arms wrap around his neck, her breath warm against his shoulder. Elena walked them to the front door, waited while he fumbled with the key again. Thank you, he said one more time. Thank you, she replied. For what? For letting me buy you dinner, for trusting me with Sophia, for reminding me that some things matter more than being busy. She handed him a business card, thick stock, embossed lettering, Santos Industries. Elena Santos, Chief Executive Officer. Call me, she said, when you're ready to talk about that job. She was back in the Tesla and driving away before Marcus could think of what to say. He stood on his porch, holding his sleeping daughter and a business card that felt like it might be made of possibility, watching taillights disappear into the night. Inside, he laid Sophia on her bed without changing her clothes, pulled a blanket up to her chin. She stirred slightly, smiled in her sleep. Good pancakes, Daddy, she mumbled. Good pancakes, he agreed. In his own bedroom, Marcus sat on the edge of the mattress and stared at Elena's business card. Santos Industries. He'd heard of them, everyone had. They were the kind of company that made news, that had buildings with their name on them, that employed thousands of people in jobs with words like executive and director and senior. What could someone like Elena Santos possibly want from someone like him? And why did he already know he was going to call her to find out? Marcus waited 3 days to call. Not because he didn't want to, the business card had lived in his wallet, pressed against the $27, like a talisman. But because calling felt like stepping off a cliff he couldn't see the bottom of. On Wednesday morning, Sophia asked where the pretty lady was. At work, baby. When is she coming back? I don't know if she is. Sophia considered this, stirring the oatmeal he'd made with water instead of milk. I think she will. Why? Because she liked our pancakes. Thursday, the Honda was ready. Jerry called from the garage, said the radiator was fixed, but they'd found other problems. Timing belt, brake pads, something about the transmission that Marcus only half understood. How much? Marcus asked. Altogether? $1,500. But we can work something out. Payments, maybe. $1,500. The number sat in Marcus's stomach like a stone. Friday morning, Sophia had a fever. Not a bad one, low grade, the kind that came with stuffy noses, and that particular exhaustion of small bodies fighting infection. But fever meant no school, which meant no work for Marcus, which meant another day without pay while the bills stacked higher. He sat beside her bed, watching her sleep, listening to her breathe through congested lungs. Elena's business card was in his hand before he realized he'd taken it out. Santos Industries. The phone number was printed in clean, professional font. What did he have to lose? Santos Industries. Elena Santos's office. The voice was crisp, efficient. The kind of voice that belonged to assistants who managed calendars worth more than Marcus made in a year. Hi. This is Marcus. Marcus Rivera. Elena gave me her card and said to call about a job. A pause. The sound of fingers on a keyboard. Mr. Rivera. Yes, Miss Santos left a note about you. She's in meetings until 3, but she asked me to schedule you as soon as you called. Are you available Monday at 10? Monday. 4 days away. 4 days to imagine what kind of job Elena Santos might offer to someone who fixed radiators in grocery store parking lots. Yes, he said. Monday at 10. Perfect. I'll send you the address. Do you have email? He gave her his Gmail, the one he'd set up years ago for job applications that rarely led anywhere. Professional sounding, but generic. mrivera1987@gmail.com. You'll be meeting in Miss Santos's office on the 15th floor. Security will have your name. 15th floor. Security. Marcus looked around his duplex at Sophia, sleeping in the next room, at the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, at the life he'd built from determination and second-hand furniture. Mr. Rivera? Are you there? Yes. Yes, I'll be there. Excellent. Miss Santos is looking forward to seeing you again. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, trying to process what had just happened. He had an appointment with Elena Santos in an office on the 15th floor of a building that probably had its own zip code. Daddy? Sophia's voice was thick with sleep and congestion. Who were you talking to? Work stuff, baby. How are you feeling? She sat up slowly, hair sticking to one side of her head. Better. Can I have juice? He made her juice from the concentrate Elena had bought, the good kind, with no artificial flavors. As she sipped it, he found himself telling her about the phone call. Are you going to take the job? She asked. I don't even know what the job is yet. But if it's good? Marcus looked at his daughter, 6 years old, with a stuffy nose and complete faith that the world would work out somehow. Maybe, he said, if it's good. The weekend passed slowly. Marcus researched Santos Industries online, reading about their expansion into sustainable technology, their partnership with major corporations, Elena's rise from software engineer to CEO before she turned 30. There were photos of her at industry conferences, accepting awards, shaking hands with people whose names he recognized from news headlines. In every photo, she looked composed, confident, unreachable. Not like someone who would buy pancakes for strangers. Monday morning, Marcus dropped Sophia at school, her fever broken, her energy restored, and took 2 buses downtown to the Santos Industries building. It was glass and steel, and ambition made solid, rising from the city like a monument to everything he wasn't. Security was exactly as efficient as he'd imagined. They scanned his ID, printed a visitor badge, directed him to elevators that moved faster than he'd thought elevators could move. The 15th floor was all clean lines and subtle lighting, the kind of space that whispered wealth without shouting it. Elena's assistant, a young man with careful hair and a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's rent, escorted him to an office that had windows for walls. Elena was standing with her back to the door, looking out at the city spread below. She turned when he entered, and for a moment, she wasn't the CEO of Santos Industries. She was just the woman who had crouched down to look at Sophia's chalk art. Marcus, thank you for coming. She gestured to a sitting area by the windows, leather chairs arranged around a glass table that reflected the sky. Marcus sat carefully, hyper-aware of his good jeans and the shirt he'd ironed that morning. How's Sophia? Elena asked. Good. She had a fever Friday, but she's better now. Kids get sick. It's what they do. Elena sat across from him, and Marcus noticed she looked tired. Not physically tired makeup could hide that, but something deeper. The kind of tired that came from carrying too much weight for too long. You wanted to talk about a job, he said. I do. Elena leaned forward slightly. But first, I want to tell you something. About why I was in that parking lot Wednesday night. Marcus waited. I was coming from my accountant's office. We'd been discussing charitable giving tax strategies, mostly, very efficient, very strategic. Writing checks to organizations that do good work without me having to think too hard about it. She paused, looked out the window at the city below. I was feeling pretty good about myself. Civic-minded, responsible, and then I saw you and Sophia. Elena, let me finish. I saw you trying to fix that car, and I saw her drawing with chalk on dirty asphalt, and I realized something. All those checks I write, all those tax deductions, they're not about helping people. They're about helping me feel better about having more than I need. The office was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic, 15 floors below. You didn't have to help us, Marcus said. Yes, I did. Not because of obligation or guilt or corporate responsibility. Because it was the right thing to do. Because Sophia was hungry and you were trying so hard to take care of her. And sometimes the world works better when we just pay attention to what's right in front of us. Elena stood, walked to her desk, picked up a folder. The job I want to offer you, she said, returning to her chair, isn't charity. It's not me trying to feel better about myself or solve problems with money. It's me recognizing something. What? That you're exactly the kind of person I need working for me. She handed him the folder. Inside were documents, job descriptions, salary information, benefit packages with numbers that made Marcus's head spin. Facilities manager, Elena said. Santos Industries has buildings all over the city. They need maintenance, repairs, upgrades. Things break, and I need someone who knows how to fix them. Someone reliable, someone who shows up. Marcus stared at the papers. The salary was more than he'd made in the best year of his life. The benefits included health insurance, dental, vision, paid time off, retirement matching. I don't have experience managing facilities, he said. You have experience fixing things. You have experience making something work when it shouldn't. You have experience taking care of what matters. Elena, this is what you're worth. What someone with your skills should be making. What someone trying to raise a daughter deserves to earn. The numbers on the page blurred slightly. Marcus blinked, focused. Why me? Elena was quiet for a moment, looking at him with that same direct gaze he remembered from the parking lot. Because when your car broke down and you were stranded with a 6-year-old, you didn't panic. You didn't give up. You kept working, kept trying to solve the problem. Because when I offered help, you didn't take it for granted. Because Sophia trusts you completely, and kids are usually right about people. She leaned back in her chair. And because I've been running this company for 8 years, and I'm tired of working with people who see problems as opportunities to blame someone else. I want to work with people who see problems as things to fix. Marcus looked at the folder again. At numbers that could mean Sophia never had to worry about whether they could afford groceries. At benefits that could mean doctor visits when she was sick, not just when she was really sick. There's one condition, Elena said. Here it comes, Marcus thought. The catch. The thing that makes this too good to be true. What? You start immediately. As in, this week. I know that's fast, but I have 3 buildings with heating systems that are barely working, and winter's coming. That was the condition? Start right away? I don't have a car, Marcus said. Company truck comes with the job. Fully equipped. Gas card. Maintenance included. Of course it did. Because Elena Santos was the kind of person who thought 3 steps ahead, who solved problems before they became problems. Elena, don't decide now, she said, standing. Take the folder home. Talk to Sophia. Think about it. But Marcus? Yeah? I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because I need someone like you, and you need a job that treats you like you matter. It's not charity. It's just good business." Marcus stood, folder in hand, feeling like he was holding the weight of possibility. "When do you need an answer?" "When you're ready to give one." Elena walked him to the door, shook his hand with that same firm grip from the parking lot. "Tell Sophia I said hello," she said. "I will." On the bus ride home, Marcus read through the folder twice. The salary, the benefits, the job description that made his work sound important, necessary, valuable. By the time he reached his stop, he'd made his decision. But he waited until Sophia was home from school to tell her. "Guess what?" he said as she dropped her backpack by the door. "What?" "Elena offered me a job." Sophia's face lit up. "Really? A good job?" "A really good job. Are you going to take it?" Marcus knelt down to her level, the way Elena had done in the parking lot that first night. "What do you think I should do?" Sophia considered this seriously, the way she considered all important questions. "I think," she said finally, "that Elena is nice. And I think you're good at fixing things. And I think maybe some things happen for a reason." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Like meeting Elena. Like her helping us. Like pancakes." Marcus laughed. "Like pancakes? Everything good starts with pancakes, Daddy." That evening, Marcus called Elena's office and left a message with her assistant. "Tell her yes," he said. "Tell her I'll take the job." 2 hours later, his phone rang. "Marcus?" Elena's voice was warm, pleased. "I'm glad." "Me too. Can you start Thursday? I'll have everything ready, truck, keys, work orders. We'll do paperwork Wednesday morning." "Thursday's perfect." "Good. And Marcus?" "Yeah?" "Welcome to Santos Industries." After he hung up, Marcus found Sophia in her room, working on homework at her small desk. "We need to celebrate," he said. "How?" "Pancakes." She grinned. "Real pancakes? With the good syrup?" "With the good syrup." As they walked to the grocery store, he had money now, or would soon, enough to buy ingredients without counting change. Sophia slipped her hand into his. "Daddy?" "What, baby?" "I told you Elena would come back." "She didn't come back." I called her. "Same thing," Sophia said confidently. "Sometimes when people are meant to help each other, they find a way." Marcus looked down at his daughter, 6 years old and wise beyond her years, walking beside him in the evening light, completely confident that the world would work out somehow. Maybe she was right. Maybe some things did happen for a reason. Maybe kindness wasn't as rare as he'd thought. And maybe accepting help wasn't the same as admitting defeat. Maybe sometimes the world really did work better when people paid attention to what was right in front of them. At the store, they bought flour and eggs and real maple syrup. And when they got home, Marcus taught Sophia how to make pancakes from scratch, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because they could. Because everything good really did start with pancakes. 6 months later, Marcus had almost forgotten what it felt like to check his bank balance with dread. Almost. The Santos Industries truck sat in his driveway, white and clean, with his name printed on the door in professional lettering. Inside, tools he'd never dreamed of owning, diagnostic equipment that made his old borrowed wrench set look like toys. The gas card in his wallet had his name on it too, and health insurance cards for both him and Sophia. But old habits died hard. Every morning, he still woke up with that familiar tightness in his chest, that reflexive mental calculation of bills versus income. The difference now was that the math worked out. More than worked out, there was extra. Enough for savings, for emergencies, for the kind of financial breathing room he'd never experienced. Sophia had adjusted faster than he had. She'd started piano lessons, not because they needed them, or because Marcus had any musical ambitions for her, but because the music teacher at school had mentioned that Sophia had an ear for melody, and for the first time in her life, wanting something didn't automatically mean doing without it. "Daddy, listen," she said, coming home from her Tuesday lesson. She sat at their new piano used, but tuned, with keys that worked and pedals that didn't stick, and played something that actually sounded like music. "That's beautiful, baby. It's für Elise." Well, the easy part. She'd grown more confident these past months, not just about piano, or about asking for things they could afford, but about the world in general. Like she'd internalized the lesson that sometimes good things happened without strings attached, that sometimes adults kept their promises. Marcus watched her practice, marveling at how quickly children adapted to security when it came. For Sophia, having enough food and a warm house and music lessons was becoming normal, the way it should be. His phone buzzed. Elena. Board meeting ran long. Rain check on dinner? For the past month, Elena had been joining them for dinner every Tuesday. It had started accidentally. She'd been inspecting the heating system Marcus had just repaired in the downtown building. They'd gotten to talking. And somehow she'd ended up at their kitchen table, eating spaghetti and listening to Sophia's elaborate theories about why dogs couldn't talk, but probably wanted to. It had become a routine. Elena would bring wine, good wine that Marcus was learning to appreciate, and they'd cook together while Sophia did homework or practiced piano. Normal domestic things that felt less normal when one of the participants was worth several $100 million. "No problem," Marcus texted back. "Everything okay? Just the usual corporate drama. You know how it is." Except he didn't really. Marcus's work world was straightforward. Things broke. He fixed them. They worked again. Elena's world was negotiations and board meetings and decisions that affected thousands of people, including him. "Rain check Thursday instead." "Perfect. Tell Sophia I'll bring ingredients for that pasta thing she likes." Marcus smiled, pocketed his phone. Thursday was 2 days away, but Sophia would start planning the menu immediately. She'd developed strong opinions about food, now that scarcity wasn't a factor. Not picky, exactly, but particular. She liked trying new things, especially when Elena was there to explain where ingredients came from or how different spices worked together. Elena had turned out to be an excellent cook, which had surprised all three of them. "I used to cook all the time," she'd explained one evening, teaching Sophia how to properly dice onions. "Before I got too busy being important." "Are you still important?" Sophia had asked. More important or less important? Hard to say. The Tuesday dinners had started as kindness, Elena checking in on them, making sure the transition to regular employment was working out. But somewhere along the way, they'd become something else. Elena would arrive carrying groceries and tension from whatever corporate crisis was currently consuming her day, and she'd leave 2 hours later laughing at something Sophia had said, looking like she'd remembered how to be a person instead of a CEO. Marcus wasn't sure when he'd started looking forward to Tuesdays, more than weekends. Wednesday afternoon, he was replacing a water heater in the Santos Industries building on 5th Street when his phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus Rivera. "Mr. Rivera, this is Jennifer Walsh from Sophia's school. I'm calling because Sophia asked me to call you instead of coming to the office." Marcus's blood went cold. "Is she hurt?" "Oh no, nothing like that. She's fine. But there's been an incident." An incident. Marcus set down his wrench, gave Jennifer Walsh his full attention. What kind of incident? Another child made some unkind comments about Sophia's family situation. About the difference between where she lives now and where she used to live. Sophia handled it very maturely, but she's upset. Marcus closed his eyes. He'd been waiting for this. You couldn't change your circumstances overnight without someone noticing, without questions being asked. What did the other child say? "I think it would be better if we discuss this in person. Could you come in?" 20 minutes later, Marcus sat in the principal's office, while Sophia explained what had happened. "Tommy said, I was lying about my daddy's job," she said, her voice steady but her hands twisted in her lap. "He said people like us don't get to have nice things, and I must have stolen something or my daddy did something bad." The principal, Mrs. Henderson, was a kind woman, who'd been nothing but supportive since Marcus's employment situation had stabilized. "Tommy's been spoken to," she said. "His comments were inappropriate, and he's been asked to apologize." "I don't want him to apologize if he doesn't mean it," Sophia said. "That's not a real apology." "Smart kid. Too smart sometimes." "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked her. Sophia considered this seriously. "I want to tell him he's wrong. Not mean, just factual. People like us do get to have nice things sometimes. We just have to work for them." "Is that what you think happened? We worked for this? Didn't you?" Marcus looked at his daughter, 6 years old, and trying to make sense of how the world worked. Why some people had more than others, whether fairness was real or just something adults told children to make them feel better. "I worked," he said carefully. "But I also got lucky. Sometimes working hard isn't enough by itself." "Because of Elena?" "Because of Elena." "So we worked and got lucky?" "Something like that." Sophia nodded, satisfied with this explanation. "Then Tommy is wrong. People like us do get to have nice things. We just needed someone like Elena to notice that we deserved them." Mrs. Henderson smiled. "That's a very mature way to look at it, Sophia. Can I go back to class now? We're learning about fractions, and I don't want to miss it." After Sophia returned to her classroom, Mrs. Henderson walked Marcus to the parking lot. "She's remarkable," the principal said. "The way she's handled the transition, the confidence she's gained. It's been wonderful to watch. She's always been remarkable. She just has more opportunities to show it now. You should be proud." Marcus looked at the Santos Industries truck parked beside the school's modest playground. "I'm getting there." That evening, Marcus told Elena about the incident when she called to confirm Thursday's dinner. "Kids can be cruel," Elena said. "How's Sophia handling it?" "Better than I am, honestly. She's got this very practical way of looking at things. Like the world makes sense if you just think about it logically enough. Wonder where she gets that from. Not from me. I spent most of my life assuming the world was designed to work against people like us." "And now?" Marcus considered this. 6 months ago, he would have said the world was fundamentally unfair, that good things happened to people who were born lucky, and everyone else had to fight for scraps. Now he wasn't sure. "Now, I think maybe it's more complicated than that," he said. "How so?" "I think there are people who have more than they need, and people who have less than they need, and most of the time those two groups don't interact. But sometimes they do, and sometimes something good comes out of it." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you think happened with us? A lucky interaction? Don't you?" "I think," Elena said slowly, "that I've been thinking about that question a lot lately. And I'm not sure luck has anything to do with it anymore." Thursday's dinner was different from their usual Tuesday routine. Elena arrived with groceries as always, but she seemed distracted, checking her phone more frequently than usual. "Work stuff?" Marcus asked as they prepped vegetables. "Board stuff." "Nothing urgent." But something in her tone suggested it was more complicated than that. Sophia didn't notice the tension. She chattered through dinner about fractions and piano lessons, and a book report she was working on. Elena listened with the focused attention she always gave Sophia, asking follow-up questions, genuinely engaging with a 6-year-old's concerns about whether Charlotte's Web was too sad for a book report. "What do you think, Marcus?" Elena asked. "Is Charlotte's Web too sad?" "I think," Marcus said, "that sad stories can still be good stories. Sometimes, the best ones are." After dinner, Sophia went to practice piano while Marcus and Elena cleaned up. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that had developed between them over months of shared meals and easy conversation. "Marcus," Elena said as she dried the last plate, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't met that night?" The question was casual, but something in Elena's voice made Marcus look at her more carefully. "Sometimes," he said. "Why?" "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. About how random it was. How easily it might not have happened." Marcus set down the dish towel, turned to face her fully. Elena, what's going on? She looked at him for a long moment, then walked to the kitchen window that overlooked their small backyard. Sophia's music drifted from the living room, halting but determined, the sound of someone learning something difficult. The board wants me to relocate, Elena said finally. To Seattle. There's a merger possibility, and they think I need to be there to oversee it. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. For how long? Indefinitely. Maybe permanently. The piano music stopped. Started again. When? Soon. Next month. Probably. Marcus processed this information, trying to figure out why it felt like such a physical blow. Elena was his boss, yes, but plenty of people worked for companies where they rarely saw the CEO. It shouldn't matter where she lived. Except, it did matter. The Tuesday dinners mattered. The way Sophia lit up when Elena arrived mattered. The way Elena had become part of their routine, their family, their life that mattered. What did you tell them? He asked. I told them I'd think about it. And? Elena turned from the window to look at him. And I've been thinking about it. About what I'd be leaving behind. The kitchen was quiet, except for Sophia's piano practice and the distant hum of traffic. Marcus found himself studying Elena's face, trying to read an expression that seemed caught between decision and regret. It's a good opportunity, he said finally, because someone had to say it. It's the opportunity I've been working toward my entire career. But 6 months ago, I thought career opportunities were the only thing that mattered. Success, growth, achievement, that was the whole point. And now? Elena looked toward the living room, where Sophia was working through the same challenging passage for the third time. Determined to get it right. Now I think maybe I've been measuring the wrong things. Elena made her decision on a Tuesday. Marcus knew something had changed the moment she walked through their front door. She carried herself differently, not the controlled confidence he'd grown used to, but something looser, more uncertain, like someone who had just stepped off a cliff and was still falling. I turned them down, she said without preamble, setting grocery bags on the kitchen counter. Sophia looked up from her homework. Turned who down? My board of directors. They wanted me to move to Seattle. Are you sad? Sophia asked with the directness of children who hadn't yet learned that some questions were complicated. Elena paused, a container of pasta in her hands. No, she said, sounding surprised. I'm not sad. Are you scared? Another pause. Longer this time. Maybe a little. Sophia nodded seriously. Daddy gets scared sometimes too. But he does things anyway. Elena looked at Marcus over Sophia's head. Does he? All the time, Sophia said. Like when he called you about the job. He was scared, but he did it anyway because scared isn't the same as wrong. Where did you learn that? Marcus asked. From you, Daddy. You tell me that all the time. Did he? Marcus tried to remember saying those words, but couldn't place them. Maybe it was something he'd communicated without realizing it, the way parents passed on lessons through actions rather than speeches. So what happens now? He asked Elena. With your job? I stay. The board isn't happy, but they'll get over it. There are other opportunities. And the merger? Someone else can handle it. Someone who wants to live in Seattle and negotiate with people who measure everything in quarterly reports. Elena began unpacking groceries with methodical precision. Marcus watched her hands steady, sure, but moving like someone working through a decision they were still testing. Elena, he said carefully, are you sure about this? She stopped, a jar of marinara sauce halfway to the cabinet. Are you asking because you think I made the wrong choice? I'm asking because I want to make sure you're not going to regret it. Why would I regret it? The question hung in the kitchen air between them. Marcus could feel Sophia listening, even though she'd returned to her math homework. 6-year-olds absorbed everything, especially conversations between adults who mattered to them. Because this is what you've worked for, Marcus said, your whole career, and you're giving it up for. What? Elena set down the jar, turned to face him fully. For this. For Tuesday dinners and piano lessons and conversations with people who don't speak in corporate acronyms. For knowing that Sophia is learning fractions, and that you fixed the heating system in Building C, and that there are things in the world that matter more than market share. Elena. For 6 months. I've been coming here every week, and every week I've felt more like myself than I do anywhere else, including my own house, including my own office, including boardrooms where people hang on my every word because I sign their paychecks. Sophia looked up from her homework. What's a boardroom? 1. A place where people in suits sit around a big table and make important decisions, Elena said. Do you like it? I used to think I did. And now? Elena glanced at Marcus, then back at Sophia. Now I think maybe I confused liking it with being good at it. Sophia considered this with her characteristic seriousness. Daddy's good at lots of things he doesn't like. Like fixing broken toilets. Marcus laughed despite himself. Thanks, baby. But you like fixing things that matter, Sophia continued. Like our car. Like the heat in my school. Like stuff that helps people. Elena was looking at Sophia with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. That's very wise, Sophia. I get it from my daddy. That evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Marcus and Elena sat on his front porch, drinking wine from mismatched glasses. The neighborhood was quiet except for distant traffic and the sound of someone's television through thin walls. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Always. That night in the parking lot. Why did you really stop? Elena was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might not answer. When she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. Because I saw my father. What? In you. The way you were trying to fix that car with tools that weren't right for the job. The way you kept working, even though it was hopeless. The way you were trying so hard to take care of Sophia. Elena took a sip of wine, stared out at the street. My father was a mechanic. Owned a small shop in East LA. We didn't have much money. But we had enough, until the shop next door expanded, and the landlord decided our block was worth more than what my father was paying. Marcus waited. He fought the eviction for 2 years. Spent everything we had on lawyers who took his money and lost anyway. I was 16 when we lost the shop. Watched my father go from being a man who could fix anything to someone who couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most. What happened to him? He got a job at a chain garage, hated every day of it. Died of a heart attack when I was in college. The words settled between them like stones. I'm sorry, Marcus said. I swore I'd never be in his position, never be vulnerable to other people's decisions. Never depend on anyone else's kindness or mercy. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Spent 15 years building walls to make sure that never happened. And then I saw you in that parking lot, and I realized the walls I'd built weren't protecting me from anything. They were just keeping me from seeing what actually mattered. A police car drove by, its headlights sweeping across the porch. In the brief illumination, Marcus could see Elena's face clearly, not the composed CEO mask she wore in meetings, but something more raw, more real. Is that why you offered me the job? He asked. Because of your father? I offered you the job because you're good at what you do, and I needed someone I could trust. But yes, maybe it was partly about my father, about giving someone the chance he never got. Marcus set down his wine glass, tried to organize thoughts that felt too large for words. Elena, I need to tell you something. Okay. These past 6 months, the job, the dinners, watching Sophia grow up without constantly worrying about money, it's been the best time of our lives. But I don't want you to throw away your career because you feel guilty about your father, or responsible for us, or Marcus. Elena's voice was firm, but gentle. Do you think I don't know my own mind? I think you're a good person who sometimes takes on more responsibility than you should. And I think you're someone who's so used to not having choices that you can't recognize when someone else is, making one freely. Elena turned in her chair to face him directly. I didn't turn down Seattle because I felt sorry for you, or because I'm trying to save anyone. I turned it down because for the first time in 15 years, I have something I don't want to lose." The words hung in the evening air between them, charged with meaning that Marcus wasn't sure he was ready to examine. "What do you mean?" he asked quietly. Elena looked at him for a long moment, and Marcus saw something in her expression shift, a wall coming down, a decision being made. "I mean that Tuesday dinners with you and Sophia are the best part of my week. I mean that I think about both of you when I'm in boring meetings or dealing with corporate nonsense. I mean that somewhere along the way, this stopped being about charity or guilt or anything else and became about—" She trailed off, shook her head. "About what?" "About love. Not the kind that happens in movies, but the quiet kind. The kind that builds slowly and feels like coming home." Marcus felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "Elena, I know it's complicated. I know there are questions about power dynamics and what people would think and whether it's smart to mix business with personal feelings. I've thought about all of that. And I've decided I don't care. I care about you. I care about Sophia. I care about this life we've accidentally built together over pasta and piano lessons and conversations about things that actually matter." The porch was quiet, except for the sound of their breathing and the distant hum of the city. Marcus looked at Elena, really looked at her, not as his boss or his benefactor or the woman who had saved them from that parking lot, but as herself, as someone who had chosen to stay when she could have left, who had chosen them when she could have chosen anything. "Sophia asked me something last week," he said finally. "What?" "She asked if you were going to be her mom someday." Elena's breath caught. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that life is complicated and some things take time to figure out." "And what did she say?" Marcus smiled. "She said time is just an excuse adults use when they're scared to say what they really want." Elena laughed, a real laugh, the kind that started in her chest and spread outward. "Smart kid. The smartest." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both of them processing what had just been said, what had just changed between them. "So," Elena said eventually, "what do you really want, Marcus?" Marcus looked at her, at this woman, who had stepped into their lives like an answer to a prayer he hadn't known how to pray, who had given him work that mattered, and Sophia opportunities he'd never dreamed of, who had shown up every Tuesday for 6 months not because she had to, but because she wanted to, who had just turned down everything she'd worked for to stay in a life that included them. "I want this," he said simply. "All of it. The Tuesday dinners and the Saturday mornings, and whatever comes next. I want to stop being afraid that good things don't last. I want Sophia to grow up knowing that sometimes the world does work out, that sometimes people show up and stay. And I want you," he continued, the words coming easier now. "Not because you saved us, or because you gave me a job, but because you see chalk art on parking lot asphalt and think it's beautiful. Because you listen to 6-year-olds like they're saying something important. Because you make me remember what it feels like to hope for things instead of just surviving them." Elena reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, real. "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay, let's do this. Let's figure out what comes next together." From inside the house came the sound of Sophia's bedroom door opening, small feet padding to the bathroom. Normal domestic sounds of a child who felt safe enough to move through her house in the dark, who trusted that the adults in her life would be there in the morning. "We should probably figure out how to tell her," Marcus said. "Tell her what?" "She already knows. Kids always know before adults do." Marcus thought about this, about Sophia's casual questions and knowing looks, about the way she'd started setting 3 plates at the table without being asked. "You're right," he said. "She's probably been waiting for us to catch up." "Smart kid," Elena said again. "The smartest." 3 months later, on a Tuesday that felt like every other Tuesday, except that Elena was moving boxes into their house instead of bringing groceries, Sophia made an announcement. "I think we should get a dog now," she said, looking up from her homework. Marcus and Elena exchanged glances over the box labeled kitchen stuff that Elena was carrying. "Why now?" Marcus asked. "Because now we're a real family. And real families have dogs." "We were a real family before," Marcus pointed out. "I know, but now we're a real family that lives in the same house. That's different." Elena set down the box, crouched to Sophia's level. "What kind of dog?" "A nice one. Maybe one from the shelter. Maybe one that nobody else wanted." "Like us?" Marcus asked. Sophia grinned. "Like us? But happier ending." That evening, after the boxes were unpacked and Sophia was in bed, Marcus and Elena sat on their front porch. The same porch where they'd figured out what they meant to each other, where they'd decided to build something together. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, gesturing toward the Santos Industries briefcase Elena had left by the door. "About which part?" "Any of it. All of it." Elena considered this, looking out at the street where they'd first met in a parking lot that felt like a lifetime ago. "I regret that it took so long," she said finally. "I regret all the Tuesday dinners we didn't have, all the piano lessons I missed, all the time I spent in boardrooms when I could have been here." "But not the decision itself?" "Not for a second." A car drove by, not a Tesla this time, but something ordinary. Something that belonged in a neighborhood where children drew with chalk and families ate dinner together, and love was measured in pancakes and presents rather than profit margins. "Sophia's right about the dog," Elena said. "Yeah? Every family should have something that nobody else wanted. Something that gets a second chance at being happy." Marcus looked at Elena, at this woman who had stopped in a parking lot and changed everything, who had chosen them every day since, who had moved her entire life to fit into theirs. "I love you," he said, because some things were simple enough to say straight. "I love you too," she replied, because some answers didn't need elaboration. From inside the house came the sound of Sophia talking in her sleep, probably working through piano lessons or math problems, or dreams about dogs named Pancake. The sounds of a child who fell asleep, knowing she was loved, safe, wanted. The sounds of home. "It's funny," Elena said quietly. "I spent 15 years building a life I thought I wanted, and it took one night in a grocery store parking lot to realize I'd been building the wrong thing." "What do you think you were missing?" Elena was quiet for a moment, listening to the domestic symphony of their house. Settling wood, humming refrigerator, the distant sound of Sophia's breathing. "I think I was missing the point," she said finally. "I thought success meant never needing anyone, never being vulnerable, never having to depend on someone else's kindness. And now I think success means having people who matter enough to depend on. People worth being vulnerable for." Marcus reached for her hand, found it waiting for his. "Even if they come with broken-down cars and chalk art and complicated mathematics of making ends meet?" Elena smiled. "Especially then." Above them, stars were visible despite the city lights. Not many, but enough. Enough to navigate by, if you knew how to look. Enough to make wishes on, if you believed in that sort of thing. Marcus was learning to believe in that sort of thing. "Tomorrow," he said, "we should probably start looking at dogs." "Tomorrow," Elena agreed. "We should definitely start looking at dogs." And in the morning, they would. They would drive to the animal shelter with Sophia bouncing in the back seat, asking questions about breeds and sizes and whether dogs really liked pancakes. They would find a dog that nobody else had wanted, probably something mixed and middle-aged with kind eyes and a tail that wagged hopefully despite whatever disappointments had brought it there. They would bring it home to a house that had learned to expand for love, to a family that had discovered that sometimes the best things happened not because you planned them, but because you were brave enough to say yes when they appeared. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, they sat on their porch, holding hands, and listening to the sounds of a life they had built from courage and kindness, and the radical decision to believe that good things could last. "It's fine, Daddy. Let's go." That's what Sophia had said that first night. When the car wouldn't start, and the future looked uncertain. And all they had was each other, and hope that tomorrow might be better than today. She'd been right, as children often were, about the things that mattered most. Everything was fine. They could go wherever they needed to go, as long as they went together. If you enjoy this story, I want you to click the subscribe button for more stories like this. This will mean a lot for the channel. Thank you.